It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha, it's Feedback Friday. And this Feedback Friday, yes, I am going to talk about the Neil Gaiman thing because a bunch of people asked me about it. And we were talking about it in the Discord. But I'm also going to talk about some of your feedback for the week because it was a study not only in, I mean, I really appreciate it when we somehow manage to have vaguely nuanced conversations over YouTube comments because YouTube's not built for it. The way they do comments, they don't even chain into individual conversations. It's just not meant for that. So thank you for helping me do something that this format is not structurally designed to do. I greatly appreciate that. And we're going to talk a bit about Toxic Toughness and Stellar Blade, and then we're going to get to Neil Gaiman. So if you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Your donations drive this channel. Your support is greatly appreciated that we can meet our goal for this week. Thank you so much. It helps. It's nice to be able to supplement people's sessions because that somebody made a comment about the general theme is sort of duality here, and somebody in response to the Manly Monday, the Toxic Toughness thing, this dichotomy of a man is either dangerous or emasculated. Pick which shitty thing you want to be. And I noticed a similar duality in the discussion about Eve's looks that goes into something the game did, but also society does, because the commenters who said that, this idea of not, morality not being neat doesn't just apply to Stellar Blade. It's a good thing for life. But this idea that a woman's either impossibly beautiful or she's ugly and there's no in between. And this is something I live. I get called ugly at least once a week, usually, well, more often than not by other women. On a day like today where I have to rush to do a video and getting up was rough today. And, it's like, okay, didn't have a lot of time, did my best, but it's like, do I spend another 10 minutes fixing my face, changing my clothes, and have less time to record this video? Or do I just do it and fuck it? I shouldn't have to look like a fucking model to have an opinion. And that's really what it comes down to. This institutionalized sexism where men are held to this really toxic toughness standard. This idea of you're dangerous or emasculated, right? You're dangerous or weak, when no, there's a third way. That's why it's too bad that, the whole Superman is boring thing is, I've been obsessed with the screenshots, like the stuff from, the James Gunn Superman movie, because I have such high hopes. But it looks so good. And that's kind of the third way with dangerous versus, oh, he's super strong, all that stuff. Yes, but everybody has their strengths. Everyone has their things they're really good at and can hurt other people with. Even being a quote unquote nobody. I mean, my week got very distracting Wednesday into Thursday because this guy we had to deal with in the Discord server, because he was sexually harassing women and being abusive towards a female moderator. We had to moderate him. He blew up. I'm like, you're out of here. And he did what people do in that situation. He blasted me, went to Stalker Chan. Of course, Stalker Chan didn't factor in that he had Coomer in his Twitter profile. She didn't care about that because she doesn't care. She's just malicious and spiteful, and hate makes you stupid. A Coomer, for those who don't know, is a chronic masturbator. So, gee, maybe he really was sexually harassing people in the Discord, but he was somebody I said, you are beyond my capacity as a peer counselor. I believe you need anger management therapy, and I will dismiss clients when I don't think that I am, when it is beyond my capacity in what peer counseling does. So I did the completely responsible thing, and now I'm in the interesting situation where I can't defend myself effectively, because releasing any evidence, I've got people jumping on me going, "You're compromising confidentiality with a client." Like, no. If it's not in a client session, if the person is no longer a client and they get abusive and I have to defend my reputation, it's not, but at some point it becomes diminishing returns. And this is another one of these really, really false dualities that I can't promise confidentiality as a peer counselor. I do everything I do to maintain it. However, if someone is, having suicidal ideations, for instance, I have to break confidentiality to call someone who can intervene, because I don't have the power to, we call it a Form 2 up here. So, there's this real lack of understanding, and everything being very black or white, either this or that. And the world is actually a lot more nuanced, and everybody signs a form when they start working with me that outlines what I can do, what I can't do, where the lines are. But people expect there to be this perfect Batman option C for everything. And sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you have to accept being called ugly because you have reasons. Because if you're seen as beautiful, you're treated as stupid. And this was the problem when I was doing pinup modeling. I went from being a nerd that nobody saw remotely sexual anything, no remote attractiveness in me, to being a stupid slut, but was seen as pretty. And I never felt pretty, because that's associated with a feminine state that I don't connect with. But it's like, all right, that's the job. And in order to do the job, in order to do that Elvgren era accurate pinup stuff, I had to be prepared to be treated as dumb. And that's just the world. And people got on me in the comments on Stellar Blade about the whole thing about the game pushing you to believe that android emotions are synthetic. They're simulated. And that, that's the whole AI debate. The whole idea of artificial sentience, of digital sentience. At what point does a constructed identity become sentient enough that we don't have the right to turn it off? We don't have the right to kill it. It's sentient. It lives. It feels. And there are some people that absolutely go, no. Anything that's a robot, anything that's synthetically created is ultimately purpose-driven, like meat cattle. It doesn't have rights the same way. And with so much in Japan being so automated, and Korea as well, we tend to lump all Asian development into Japan and shift up's Korean. But, them grappling with this stuff because their societies are driven by tech and technological advancement. That's not me saying I think the emotions are simulated. That's me saying that the game sets it up. The game does deal with what it means to be human. And I can't get into more than that because it's a spoiler. And these are the sorts of things where I wish we could do roundtables on the games. And unfortunately, those are very difficult to do. We keep trying them. We keep refining the process on the Discord. But the reality that some people who are not accountable will you know, take screenshots and release them out of context, or say something happened in chats are worse because they can say anything happened. And, you know, this guy that defamed me this week, the part of the reason I stopped talking to him, and I have this in Telegram chats, is I said, look, you are misrepresenting what happened, meaning I need a record of everything I say to you, meaning, no, we can't have nice chats anymore. And even if you record the chats, people are not going to watch an entire hour of boring conversation to get the part that, you know, get the entire context of a comment that may seem completely innocuous on its own, but in context, sorry, you know, may seem completely innocuous in context, but separated from context looks bad, right? That happens all the time. I felt shitty doing this because somebody who's working on the game, thank you for those that provided feedback on the game, by the way. Patreons, check your messages. There's a way to play the demo in your messages. Check it, please. But I had to tell someone working on the game, look, I would prefer you not say that on social media. And this is where my belief that people are allowed to have opinions I don't agree with, people are allowed to conduct themselves in ways I don't agree with, clashes with the reality that people will take things out of context in 8 months, and people don't care. People are so eager to destroy each other that they're not interested in your explanations. I'm so at the point where, you know, with all this online abuse, people are going to believe about me what they want. And people really misunderstand my own relationship with the whole, oh, you're model beautiful or you're ugly. I can't afford to be treated as dumb. So I have to be ugly. Ugly, air quotes. And this is when people start calling, oh, you're not ugly. Oh, she's just fishing for attention. Oh, she just wants attention. She just wants compliments. No, I am explaining the shitty reality of being a woman in game dev. Because you go to these fucking conferences and guys are trolling for a quick fuck. And you'll spend 20 minutes talking to a guy and you think it's a business conversation, and then he finds he ain't getting any that night, and suddenly he drifts away, he's not interested in you anymore, and you have just wasted your time. You thought you were networking for business purposes. He thought he was going to get laid because, unfortunately, in this left-wing paradise that is video games, no, these left-wing men they're frauds, okay? The feminism is hard, and it's very rewarding whenever I can do, I kind of like that a mostly feminist analysis of games. I like looking at games that way, because I do think that we need an analysis, not a judgment. And the thing that I find both fulfilling and frustrating about that kind of thing is that exactly what I talked about before. I'll talk about how the game sets something up, and because someone had a different opinion than what I think was the intent early in the game, it's I'm wrong or they're wrong, and it's not about that. It's not about that for me. The great thing about, especially the way a lot of Asian devs do games like Death Stranding or even Metal Gear, the Nier franchise, Stellar Blade, Elden Ring, like the FromSoft stuff, Bloodborne, they don't spoon feed you what you're supposed to think about absolutely everything. They leave it up to you. The idea of play is you play with the concepts. I had a great conversation with someone about Elden Ring lore. We're both Elden Ring lore nerds. And so there were some things we weren't even sure about. And the unanswered questions are part of the play. They're part of the interactive experience, which means saying, like, look, this seems to be where they were leading me early in the game, but the game allowed me to disagree with that premise. And again, can't talk about it because it's spoilers, but I'm not saying you're not allowed to believe Eve has feelings. Quite the opposite. I think that there is one read on the game that comes down very strongly on beautiful people have feelings, but ugly, dehumanized things that feel also have feelings. And I think that a lot of this issue with how shit the internet is, especially in gaming spaces, is because of these dichotomies of men are either dangerous or emasculated. And a lot of these guys who are shy, who might be socially awkward, who don't get a lot of attention from people in general, but notably women, they'd rather be dangerous than pathetic, because that's the only two choices they believe they have, because they think they're too ugly and gross to find that Superman middle way. And it's not true. I know a lot of guys who are average looking. Some guys I know are either, and this is not an insult, this is just descriptive. They're notably overweight, but they get a lot of attention from women. They've had quite a few girlfriends because they're charming, because they're caring. Charm does a lot. And we focus a lot on the importance of charisma, the riz, in men. But we don't apply that to women as well. With women, we have this false bullshit that you're either physically a knockout or you're useless. And it's not true. The whole point is it's not true. And every time I say that, people start acting like I'm fishing for compliments, and I'm not. I am expressing what not only I've personally experienced, but I've been in meetings where I see liberal feminist male game devs or just, media developers in general hedging around the fact that they don't think the female character is fuckable enough to put in the game. And even though the whole design directive is moving more towards a Ripley type, a Linda Hamilton and Terminator type or something like that, or like a Gina Carano, Cara Dune thing, they just don't think she's feminine enough or fuckable enough, and they can't say it. And so things go to shit. And it's not right, because, I do think Star Wars Outlaws is going to come up and it's going to be fine, and I give Ubisoft credit, because they knew they were going to get oh, she's ugly, just because she doesn't look like Eve. And the people that argued me, Eve is based on a model, I am going to put that to bed right now. Because yes, they did do a motion capture of a body capture of a model for Eve, but they took that as a base and altered it significantly. I did a side-by-side. I've lost it now. I actually put the image into Photoshop just to see how much extra ass they added. And it's a good 3 inches of extra ass. But here's the model's face. The model on the left is the model Eve is based on. Here's Eve. You can see they very noticeably changed. Her nose is less wide. Her lips are about the same, but Eve's lips are slightly larger. The eyes are less Asian in Eve. They are more Caucasian. And You'll notice her chin is even a little sharper. Her face is a little less full. And personally, I think the actual model is sexier. I actually think she's more attractive because she looks like a person. But that was not the point of the game. The whole point of the game is to make Eve look impossible. And again, the reasons for that are spoilers. I can't get into them, but please just trust me that Eve looking, and I don't know why people said, like, took that one comment out of context. She was based on a model. I related to Eve's clothing problems. Clearly, I wasn't saying everything about her was impossible. The thing I find the most improbable, is her face and the fact that her feet are basically horses' hooves. They're high-heeled shoes with no heel. But again, that's deliberate. That's not a mistake. That's not sexist. That's essential to the plot and theme of the game. And this is where I want to briefly touch on the Neil Gaiman thing, because some of you may have seen that Neil Gaiman has been accused of sexual assault by 2 different women. One was a nanny for his kids. The other had just turned 20. He met her at a book signing when he was something like 43. And whether every detail of the allegations is true is not what I focused on when I made comments on Twitter. It was what he himself confirmed happened. He had intimate contact with his kid's nanny. And he had rough sex with a fan when he just met her. The thing that is in dispute is whether or not it's consensual. And the problem with Neil Gaiman's position is if somebody's reliant on him and his family for a job, is it really something where consent can be given? And I think, unfortunately, guys like Neil Gaiman, guys like Joss Whedon, they think that because they identify as a feminist, they care about these issues, they don't have to watch their own behavior. And this is one of the things that Stellar Blade deals with. Again, South Korean company. Very timely for South Korea with the 4B feminist movement. This idea that, I'm a feminist, so I mean well, so my behavior can't be abusive. It can't violate consent. Yes, it can. That's a false assumption. And it's just a bad idea to get sexy with the nanny. I don't care how many porn scenarios there are of that. It's just, that is your employee. It's not the same, age difference aside, right? Other factors aside, she was his employee. And apparently he just met her. So I guess Amanda Palmer hired her. Is that her name? Yeah, Dresden Dolls. His ex. The whole thing is like, the more you read about it, and again, I'm taking his word for what happened. I am not just assuming unproven allegations. I'm going based on what he said happened. And it's still really fucking bad. And when you look at his, Netflix adaptation of The Sandman, which he was showrunner on, and he's still got Dream imprisoning a woman for like 10,000 years for mouthing off to him. We have some problems here. We do. And that's not me judging content from the 90s. That's me judging, he thought it was a good idea to make Dream's servant, who was a white man in the comics, into a black woman. there are clearly some things that if you don't like death being black, you're a racist, and you hate women. I'm paraphrasing, but that was basically the gist of him fighting with people on Twitter about that change. Clearly there are some blind spots here, and these male feminists, and I am not saying there are no good male feminists out there. It's the ones that scream it from the rooftops and speak for women. It is the speaking for women that shows you don't get it. There are ways of advocating for what you believe in, and then there's stuff that just doesn't work, and you're telling on yourself. And Neil Gaiman did a lot of telling on himself. Like, no matter what happens here, there is some behavior of his that he really needs to look at. Because even if it was consensual with this 20-year-old fan when he was 43, it's not just that she was a fan. And it's not just that she was only 20 years old, meaning her brain hadn't fully matured. It was the combination of the two that gives him a lot of power in that scenario and makes me think the entire thing was just inappropriate. There is a sort of collective social responsibility to still protect men and women when they're that young. You know, people, the guy that's harassing me right now has said things. She's not the hero. She's not the hero I thought she was. I never claimed to be a hero. I never did. You know, this guy he's over 30 now, but still there's clearly like, whoa, I did not, I never represented myself that way. He projected that onto me, and that is a risk. It's even a risk with freaking YouTube. The people that have kind of a starstruck moment when they talk to me, and it's freaking YouTube, man. I keep my channel small for a reason, but even then, there's this hero worship that goes on that you have to be extremely aware of. And sometimes you do have to get tough with people, and you do have to say something you know is going to hurt them. The minute he started accusing my moderators of false shit, the minute he refused to stop using terms that women in the Discord were saying, stop saying this, it is disgusting. And he kept claiming he forgot. I have to do something. And I have to eat the shit. You know, I have to be the big bad villain again to do the right thing. So these guys like Neil Gaiman, like Joss Whedon, that don't really own. This is where we get into the idea of privilege. It is a privilege for me to talk to you guys, to come here and have these discussions. There's a terms of service. There's a reputational thing. It could disappear tomorrow. It is a privilege. And I have to be aware of that and behave accordingly, which means sometimes, remember that thing, you're either ugly or you're hot, you're either dangerous or you're emasculated. In my position, dealing with people who watch my content, dealing with people I work with, I know that in the minds of a lot of people, I'm either super sweet earth mother bestie or I'm a bitch. And that's why I don't like the word bitch, because it's lazy. It doesn't, you can just go, she's a bitch, and not really have to deal with what you don't like about that woman. Because a lot of the time, women get called a bitch for saying the word no. And when you are a 20-year-old girl, and I say this as someone who, started working in TV when I was 19. I was a producer by 21. But I mean, we were dealing with some pretty big names. And every band I utterly loved was a horrible dick to me. The Smashing Pumpkins were a dick to me. The Red Hot Chili Peppers were dicks. They were just swaggering, glowering, gloomy assholes who were abusive. The Smashing Pumpkins were right before they broke up, so take that for what it's worth. John from the Chili Peppers had a sleeve of medical tape. You could see the injection sores underneath them, so not at their best. I'll give them that. But you do want these people that you idolize to like you, and you give them passes you otherwise wouldn't. And this is why, even though I've gotten rid of things like patriarchy, toxic masculinity, it's institutionalized sexism, and toxic toughness now, the idea of privilege, the dual meaning of the word, I think is important. That I don't have a right for anybody to watch my content. It's a privilege. And yes, having any sort of audience, even, the 1,000 or so people who regularly watch my videos, that's not nothing. That's a privilege. I'm going to be humble and grateful about that. I'm not going to act like an asshole because it can be taken away. The same thing with the social status that these guys like Neil Gaiman, like Joss Whedon, use to paper over their own self-loathing and, get with these women and not take responsibility for the fact that there is a massive power imbalance. And even though they don't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there. Hence, privilege. We are all privileged in entertainment. A lot of people who are extremely talented can't get anywhere. A lot of people can't get work despite being a lot better at what they do than the people who do get really crazy famous, right? It's a privilege. And we have to treat it like a fucking privilege. And flings with fans, much younger fans, fucking the nanny, you are going to lose the privileged position you have. You're fucking it up. No excuses. It's one thing if there's a deep emotional relationship with somebody. I mean, David Tennant ended up marrying the woman who played his daughter on Doctor Who. I just watched that episode last night. I'm like, wait, Georgia Tennant? Oh, that must have been weird at first. But I mean, they've been married for years. They got a bunch of kids, and it's acting. But they were on the show together. Yes, he's the star. I'm sure they were quite careful, but when it becomes a committed relationship like that, that is not the same as having a fling in New Zealand with somebody. I get that you're lonely. I get that creativity can come with a real darkness, but you don't have the right to use other people as tools to alleviate your sadness and loneliness. They are people. And that's why the challenges that media like Stellar Blade, what it means to be human, and using an impossibly beautiful woman as the centerpiece in an examination of who is just a tool that has to sacrifice themselves to bleed and die for other people, who is an object instead of a subject. What is considered human? Just because something is ugly doesn't mean they don't matter. These are all themes of this game, and they are all essentially important in a world where, dangerous is sexy for men because otherwise you're emasculated. And this very, very expensive, surgically enhanced beauty standard for women, again, is associated with money. A lot of money. Which means the vast majority of people are not going to meet that standard. Those people still have to matter. And we're failing on that point, which is why I think our society is so polarized. But I'll leave you there to mull this over. Hope you like this examination. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching, and I was slow on this. Have a great weekend.